Alameda LAFCO meeting, January 16, 2020.
January 16th, first item of business will be the roll call pledge of allegiance. Will be the pledge first, led by Thorne, Eric Thorne.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Here.
Commissioner Splendorio,
Here.
Commissioner Marchand,
Here.
Commissioner Thorne,
Here.
Commissioner Miley, Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Wieskamp,
Here.
Commissioner Halbert, Commissioner Valle, Commissioner Von Heater Leopold,
Here.
Commissioner Pico.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Hello, Mona. Hi, commissioners.
All right,
So much for sneaking in.
all right, service recognition for LAFCO analyst Teresa Ruth Smith and commission clerk Cindy.
Just a reminder, commissioners, to please turn your mic on. If it's red, that means it's not on.
Now it's on?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a little backwards.
Sorry. Thank you, Commission. I just wanted to take this opportunity to offer our warmest congratulations on the retirement of Sandy Hugh and Teresa Rude Smith from the County of Alameda and the Alameda Local Agency Formation Commission. I know that your commitment to public service and your many achievements and your career were a source of deep personal pride, as well as they should be. Your commitment has served as an abiding source of inspiration and motivation for those who have worked with you and for you. And as you know, the Alameda Local Agency Formation Commission strives to maintain a good quality of life within Alameda County. But we do so only with the talents and commitments of those who devote their careers to public service. Your work has made differences throughout the region, and you have every right to be proud. It is my sincere hope that you leave the Alameda Local Agency Formation Commission with a sense of accomplishment for all of your contributions that you have made. It should give you a great sense of fulfillment to know that you made a distinct and positive difference in the lives of so many people during your career. Retirement will be a wonderful opportunity to spend time with your family and friends. Teresa, you will have time to take extensive trips to San Diego, sail to San Francisco Bay and beyond, and attend all of the baseball games. Sandy, you will have time to take long trips to Hawaii, focus on your meditation, and run every marathon until your heart's content. May your retirement years bring you many well-deserved rewards and much happiness. I do have a certificate of recognition of your hard work and your dedication and my deepest appreciation. Again, I wish to offer my congratulations on your retirement and thank you for a job well done. And I just want to note to these two coming into this job, they led me and wanted to make sure that I had a successful position and role as an executive officer. I couldn't have done half the things that I've accomplished without them. They helped me navigate all the processes and systems with the county, and they did so with enthusiasm. And I really, really appreciate all the work that they did, and I will miss them greatly. So I just want to say thank you to Teresa and Sandy. And you can come up here. Thank you. Now I'm going to enclose for you. Aw, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. And stand up there and I'll get a photo real fast.
Don't forget we have a cake.
And we have a surprise cake for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of
Thank
questions.
you.
I would ask, you guys would like to go first and speak, or wait until the commissioner speaks so you can rebuttal anything? I'll go to the commissioners first. Is there anybody that'd like to say something? Commissioner Wieskamp?
I don't think you're going to have enough to do. And therefore, on behalf of the East Bay Regional Park District, I'm going to give you a beautiful book to inspire you to go out. I don't care if you're running a marathon, taking a walk, whatever you want to do, looking at birds. Please come and know that I really appreciated your hard work. And you never lost your temper. And that's not easy for people who work sometimes for some of us who call ourselves politicians. So please come and enjoy the book.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and well
This
done.
is awesome.
Good.
So I'd like to congratulate first Sandy on her retirement because she's been a measured, patient person who looks at every crazy request that we may make and says, yeah, I'll figure that out. And then Teresa, I mean, you came in under the, these relatively new from a different position, learned it quickly. Unfortunately, had to learn under our old executive officer, who not named, who beat you down, and then you were raised back up. I think Mona's not pointing anything at you, is she?
Maybe. You don't know, do you?
She's getting ready for the rebuttal.
Anybody else? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Liz, thank you so much. You're able to work out all the crazy little details from your iPads and the packet. We worked all that out, and just works much, much better. So I appreciate all the contributions of both of you to make this organization the good organization it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just think one of the great things that I got to see working at the county, and I know that Sandy, she's always just kind of steady. Just make sure everything stays cool, gets done. And when I see Teresa, she's just a little bit more, I don't know. She always has something to say. At the
Not
elevator.
even, not steady is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, but your sense of humor has been appreciated on those road days. So, I just want to thank both of you for the job that you've done, and wish you happy trails. And I'm sad you got out about a year ahead of me, but we'll all wind up in Hawaii at some point.
There we
So
go.
Thank you very much.
We will.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, with that, thanks again.
Thank you.
Are we going to take a picture?
Mona, did you want?
Yes.
Can we?
I'll give my speaker card to the
That's all
clerk.
right.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about your fabulous staff for going off into retirement. And the first thing that springs to mind is I really appreciate all the comments that have just come about Sandy's even keel, and she doesn't yell, and you guys just don't know. So I just want to say that to start. And I just wanted to acknowledge my appreciation for having worked with Sandy for many, many years, over a decade, and with Teresa on LAFCO for the, I guess for 6 months or a year or so of her term with LAFCO. And I especially wanted to call out Sandy's work with the summer youth internship program that she did. It was really allowed your commission to have a high school student be exposed to local government at all different levels, and that was just a fabulous thing. And her work on the 2014 Cal LAFCO staff workshop, which was a big effort to put together, so I just want to include that in there. And just the general, as you guys have already acknowledged, the general work that she did to keep your agendas flowing and all of your application materials together and filing all the requisite paperwork. So I just wanted to add my voice of appreciation for all the work that your fabulous retiring staff have accomplished. And I just wanted to also mention that Luann Texera, who was your former executive officer, also wanted to extend congratulations to the staff. She just couldn't be here today. So thank you very much, and it's great to see you, except maybe Commissioner Slendor. Otherwise, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? All right, happy trails. Enjoy.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
So I'm not inclined to do item 4 just yet because we have a public here. I would like to hold off item 4 till the end of the meeting. That way we don't have to excuse them and bring back in all that stuff, and we can just keep this meeting going. So, so that's my intention on that. Then on public comment, anybody wish to speak to anything that's not on today's agenda? Seeing none, I'm looking for a approval of the consent calendar, which is 6A and B. Moved by Marchand, second by Wieskamp. Any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Item 7.
Thank you, Chair. Alameda LAFCO will receive its second report. Bye, Mona. Alameda LAFCO will receive its second quarter report of budgeted to actual transactions for the current fiscal year.
Is yours on? No.
Can you hear me a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So LAFCO is on pace to finish the fiscal year with a balanced budget, which includes $180,000 from the fund balance to offset agency apportionments. Actual expenses processed through the first 6 months totaled $174,917, and this is an amount representing 22% of the budgeted total. Alameda LAFCO has collected all the agency apportionments, so we are good for that. And then just lastly, the report is being presented for the commission to accept and file. And if there's any questions from the commission or discussion to provide to staff as needed.
Any questions? Okay, then this is a accept and file, so I'm not sure that we need a motion on that, correct? Or do you want to? It says accept, so we'll do it. You need a motion to accept and file. Moved by Marchand, second by Wieskamp.
Well, you're really good.
Yeah. When you're closer to my ear. All right, we'll move to motion passed without objection to accept and file this report. Move to item 8.
Thank you, Chair. The Alameda LAFCO Formation Commission will receive a status update and report from the City of Alameda Healthcare District as requested by the Commission at its May 9, 2019 meeting. Debbie Stevens, the Executive Director of the City of Alameda Healthcare District, is here today to give that presentation to the Commission.
Good afternoon. Am I on here?
Yes.
Okay, good. And here's the little thing to advance this. My name is Debbie Stebbins. I am the Executive Director for the City of Alameda Healthcare District, and I've held that role for about a year and a half now. Just in terms of full disclosure, I was the CEO at Alameda Hospital between 2007 and 2014 when Alameda Hospital became an affiliate of the Alameda Health System. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the history of the hospital. Let me see, make sure I use the right thingy here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to advance the slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the hospital, the formation of the district in 2002. That's right. There we go. And more importantly, I think the relationship between Alameda, the district of the Alameda Healthcare District and Alameda Health System, which I think would be of particular interest to the LAFCO Commission. These are our 5 elected board members. In addition to myself, I'm not on the board, but I work for the board. And all I would point here is that all of our commissioners obviously are Alameda residents and with the Alameda Health System Board. So she serves on both the Alameda Health System Board, which again we're a member of as a part of that system, and she serves on the district board. Mike Williams is a captain in the Alameda Fire Department. Gail Kadiga is a lawyer by background, but she is a 5th generation Alamedan, and that's not unusual. Before working in Alameda in the early 2000s, I didn't know the city very well, except my kids played soccer in Alameda. There's a long-standing longevity of Alameda residents and a very tight community, very loyal to the hospital. Dr. Deutsch, for example, has practiced at the hospital as a pulmonologist since probably 40 years ago. So really strong connection to the hospital. What is the role of the district board? I just articulate this because it's a little different than other hospital or healthcare districts. We do not currently operate the hospital as we did prior to 2014. Instead, we own the property the hospital's on. We're stewards of that hospital property and programs that are associated with that. We do continue to collect the parcel tax from the residents of Alameda, and we are there to ensure the provision of acute care, emergency services, and other health care for the residents of Alameda. And finally, we're there as a liaison with the Alameda Health System. We regularly receive reports, and we provide reports back to them in terms of the quality of care and the effectiveness and efficiency of care at the hospital. A little bit about our history. It's interesting that we're the second oldest hospital in Alameda County, right after the predecessor physically to the Alameda County Medical Center, or now what is AHS, which was in the Oak Knoll area then. Was founded, like a lot of hospitals, as a 6-bed sanatorium. We don't use that word anymore in healthcare, but that was what it was called then. And later in the 20s, very much parallel like to Alta Bates, there was a lot of development of hospitals in the 1920s, and they created a 100-bed hospital that now still exists, that physical plant, and it is administrative offices right now. But it was a 100-bed hospital, pretty large for the time period, on Clinton Avenue. First all-electric hospital west of the Mississippi, which is kind of interesting. First operating elevators in the city of Alameda, and still those elevators still occasionally operate, not kind of intermittently. In the late 20s, like a lot of hospitals, we felt the impact of the Depression. In 1939, facing foreclosure, the hospital was bought out by a group of local investors, which remained owners of the hospital, so it was essentially a proprietary organization until later on when a 501c3 was formed and we became a not-for-profit institution. The 1950s and through the 90s were great periods of growth for the hospital, and this is a very bad, difficult to read slide. I know you have hard copies, and by the way, if anybody in the audience wants hard copies of the presentation, it's up there at the front too. I'm glad to autograph that at the end of the presentation. The upper right corner here, this is a rendering of our current master facility plan. The upper right corner is that old building that I mentioned, the administration building, built in 1926. Next to that is the Stevens Wing, which was built in the 1950s, and actually now is the subject of construction. We're moving the old kitchen from the hospital to the Stevens Wing to comply with 2020 seismic standards, which I'll talk about further in a few minutes. In the 1960s, there was the West Wing that was built, no relationship to the one in Washington. And then finally in the 1980s, 1983, there was a building that we refer to this as the South Wing, which is the building that's shown in the photograph here. And interestingly enough, that is our largest building, and it also is mostly compliant with 2030 standards. When we talk about seismic planning for the future, becomes very relevant that that building might be able to be retained as a part of our future planning. Then in around the 1980s, a skilled nursing facility was built on the campus that is still operated to this point in time. We actually didn't always operate it and then took over operations again when I was the CEO. The formation of the healthcare district occurred in the late 90s, and there was a lot going on that impacted somewhat adversely healthcare in Alameda, or in the hospital in particular. We had, of course, very big changes in reimbursement in healthcare, which we can talk about more if people have questions, but specifically for Alameda was the big closure of the Alameda Naval Air Station, which was the largest naval air base, or naval base actually, on the West Coast. Now the only remaining one is San Diego in California. That was a huge change for Alameda because it not only provided thousands of jobs, but it generated residents, people that retired from the Navy often found Alameda a nice community to live in afterwards and moved there after their retirement. because of those complexities and those financial constraints, the board deliberated long and hard and decided at that point to attempt to create a healthcare district. It actually would have become then the newest healthcare district, I believe, in the state of California at that time. That was a very laborious process, one that involved lots of volunteers, very committed to keeping acute care and emergency department services in particular open in the island of Alameda. And had that statute not passed, it was an Alameda local statute, had that not passed as a tax by 2/3 of the voters, as taxes are required to be passed, the alternative, I'm told at the time, was really to consider closing the hospital. So that was averted through a tremendous effort in terms of a volunteer board that then morphed itself into a district board. So by 2/3 passage of that, after approval and commissioning of, or approval of formation of the district by LAFCO, that was approved by 2/3 of the voters. It's a 298 parcel per year parcel tax per parcel, and that's approved in perpetuity. It's pretty high parcel taxes. Parcel tax go. Generates about $6 million in revenue, which was enough to stave off closure in the short term for Alameda, which you'll see in a couple of minutes. That's not a long-term solution. And the assets were transferred from the nonprofit corporation to the district. In 2007 through 2012, the hospital began a new round of strategic planning. I was brought on board. I had about 35 years of healthcare experience as CEO in other hospitals and other health organizations, but particularly had a lot of experience and interest in strategic planning, in program development, and in affiliation and acquisitions in other organizations, which I think made the board interested in my coming on board. At that point in time, when we completed a new strategic plan, we had reaffirmed that importance of acute care and emergency services. We realized the parcel tax, while very essential to our operations, was not going to be sufficient for the long haul to sustain the hospital. That we needed other sources of revenue, other new programs that were very complementary to what we already provided and really valuable for the community, that would augment what we were seeing in acute and other sources of revenue. But finally, the most important conclusion was that Alameda Hospital was not going to be able to survive as a small, standalone operation for the long haul. We did add new programs. As I mentioned, we added 125 more skilled nursing beds and subacute beds. Those are very important services provided by the hospital and now through AHS. We opened a primary stroke center. We opened a very diverse orthopedic program and recruited 2 very well-trained orthopedists to staff that. And we opened a wound care center that is the only wound care center, comprehensive wound care center, between San Francisco and Walnut Creek at this point in time. It's very well utilized. About 80% of the patients come from off the island of Alameda. One thing you can see in those new programs that's common to all of them is that Alameda is an older community. It is the second oldest city within the county of Alameda, and almost all those services are somewhat geared to serving the elderly. That's certainly something that in our program development and continued operation through AHS that we continue to be aware of and focused on our planning. So why did we look for an affiliation partner? Well, we needed access to capital, particularly for capital needed for the upcoming seismic requirements that now are hitting this year in 2020. We wanted to develop new technology that's important in any healthcare endeavor, including implementing an electronic health record required under the Affordable Care Act. We wanted to get better access to rates and leverage with payers that we couldn't do as a standalone system compared to a Kaiser or compared to a Sutter and so forth, or John Muir even as a larger, somewhat standalone, although that's changing hospital. And we wanted to have a better ability to attract and retain an array of physicians in healthcare providers. It was very difficult to do as a small hospital. So we ended up developing a request for discussion, not a request for proposal, but we used that document as a vehicle which described our situation, what we were looking for, and we knocked on the doors of about 9 different systems in the area. That took some time to accomplish. A lot of those systems were in very different places in 2000, let's say it's around 2011 or 12, when we were doing these discussions, than they are today. So some of the systems you see developed today, UC, Stanford, John Muir, were much earlier in their strategic development, and in some cases probably weren't quite able to accommodate and think about us as a potential member of their system. But we did develop ideal criteria for what a partner would look like. We wanted to find a partner that had a common set of values and commitment to serving everyone on the island. We wanted a partner that was committed to keeping acute care and emergency services there. Those were fundamental in what we were looking for assurance on. Would provide us access to capital, particularly for seismic retrofit. Would have some legal ease of affiliation, and without going into a lot of detail, it was quite a bit easier to affiliate with another public entity like AHS than it was, say, for an affiliation between just the district as a public entity and a private player like say Sutter. We also wanted to find a system that had their own vision for how to build a healthcare system. So after that process that took probably a good 9 months to a year, we developed serious negotiations with Alameda Health System. And at that time, this is Highland Hospital, which is still the flagship of the Alameda Health System, but that also includes now John George Hospital Psychiatric Facility, Fairmont Hospital, which is in San Leandro. Now San Leandro Hospital was added the same year as Alameda Hospital and Alameda Hospital. All of those, now those 5 hospitals are under AHS. Alameda Hospital is the only one of the 5 that is still separately licensed, and the affiliation was implemented in 2014. So what are the different responsibilities of the different parties under the Joint Powers Agreement that was the document that perfected the affiliation? The district, again, allows AHS to use the hospital facilities, which are still owned by the district, and operate health services there. The district collects the parcel tax and is the steward to make sure that parcel tax is only used for the purpose for which it was developed under the statute. And the district receives regular reports from AHS on how the hospital operations are proceeding. AHS, in turn, oversees the operations and all the financial performance, collects all the revenue, manages all the expenses associated with the hospital operations, committed to operate at least 50 acute care beds and an emergency department under the JPA, initially under a separate license and medical staff, although that still remains as a separate license and medical staff. And AHS committed to be responsible for completing the seismic retrofit needed for 2020 standards, which is now about a $25 million project that is underway right now. Joint responsibilities was beginning in 2020, this year. The Joint Powers Agreement specified that we had to do joint planning for what would happen on the campus in 2030. There's a whole new set of seismic regulations that kick in 2030. You may have read a lot about that. That's a big sword hanging over the heads of a lot of hospitals in California. Many hospitals are threatened to go out of business as a result of the inability to capitalize those requirements. And we'll have to see what happens with whether or not those requirements change, whether they get extended as other seismic requirement statutes have, or they just stay in place and we have to bite the bullet and make sure. And that's how we're acting right now, is that we're proceeding as if those are clearly in place, which means that seems like a long ways off, but I never thought I'd be standing here talking to anybody in 2020 when was 30 or 40. But here we are, and you need to start planning a facility well in advance. 10 years is not a long horizon. I should point out, very importantly, in the JPA, the 2030 seismic requirements are not required to be funded by AHS. It is the district's responsibility to decide how and with whom we're going to fund those 2030 requirements. This is better seen in your hard copy packets, but this is just a 4-year summary of our distributions to AHS. You can see that after the funding of district-related expenses, all of the revenue that comes in through the tax base goes to AHS to support the hospital, and in fact is needed by AHS to do that. There was a little increase in our district expenses in this last year. Back to that. No. Now I flipped ahead and I don't know how to go back. I'll catch up. There was a little increase in our expenses of the district in 2019, mainly because my position was added. We didn't have any executive director before that. We added a part-time clerk. We had some election expenses for our district board members in that year. And very importantly, we commissioned 2 consulting studies, which I'll talk about in that year, to get us ready for our 2030 planning.
What do you mean by you had some expenses for some of your district board members?
The election related, who we pay to the county for the election, the ballot.
Oh, okay.
The ballot expenses associated with the district boards. No, they're not paid by the district or anything. Don't get excited. Or maybe you'd like to.
It's good for me. It's my former cardio.
That's good. I'm glad I could help that way. So what's the current relationship between AHS and the district? Clearly, without this affiliation, Alameda Hospital would not be in existence today, that's for sure. Our average acute census at Alameda is about 38 patients. That's up from when we entered into the affiliation of probably about 25 patients, and I'll explain why that's gone up. Our average skilled nursing and subacute census is 174, so you can see how that's such an important part of our service array in Alameda is long-term care. That is 100% occupancy, and we have a waiting list for our skilled nursing and subacute programs. Do about 16,000 visits in the ED each year. About 1,000 of those come from ambulance runs from the Alameda Fire Department, which, as you may know, runs the paramedic program in Alameda as opposed to the contract service that many of the cities in Alameda contract with. We have our own fire department paramedic program. About a third of those acute care patients now come in the form of transfers from Highlands Emergency Department or their acute census. At any given time, and Tracy can correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's about twice a week when Highland goes on what's called a code red, when they maximize how they have no beds left in the hospital to admit their ED patients, and as you can imagine, I'm sure Highland is by far and away the largest emergency department. It's a primary, trauma center. Thank you. Trauma center. My cardiac was going up there. It's a primary trauma center, and it's extremely busy, but because of a lack of acute care beds, they sometimes have to hold their patients in the emergency room for as long as 24 to 48 hours. Now that's been made shorter as a result of partially the affiliation with Alameda Hospital. The long-term care program is very well regarded by the state and by CMS, routinely receives 5-star ratings. Some things that were not as good in terms of what we expect from the affiliation. Contracting with third-party payers has been a lot slower to materialize. That hasn't been a focus as much of AHS. On the other hand, we have been the beneficiary of a new electronic health record, the EPIC system, which is used now in almost every hospital in the Bay Area as the electronic health record in 2019. Went very successfully. It was a turnkey project for AHS, and they turned on all 5 hospitals and long-term care facilities at the same time. People were sweating bullets and midnight, and past the midnight hours. And then, as I mentioned before, a little bit slower in contracting with third-party payers and medical development. In 2018, it's not on that slide, but 2018 and 19, the district became extremely concerned about the possibility that AHS would be unable financially or unwilling to meet that obligation to meet the 2020 seismic retrofit requirements. So that initiated about the time that I came on board again as the executive director, knowing that that was going to be a major planning issue for the district. And there was a lot of work done in terms of communication with AHS to do that, but frankly also a lot of communication on the part of the district with our elected officials at the city and the county and the state level to talk about the consequences of what would happen if those 2020 seismic requirements were not met. And I'm happy to say that crisis has been diverted for now. The approval of that plan by AHS's board took place in September 2019. The project started construction the next month, and we are well underway to that being completed, and it's required to be complete by the state by 2021, so we're on target to do that. But in preparation for the other issue of 2030 and what we do there, the district commissioned 2 studies in 2019. One was done by a consulting firm called Kaufman Hall. They'd actually been involved in the original affiliation agreement and the negotiation of the Joint Powers Agreement when we did the affiliation in 2014. Kaufman Hall came back and did a study that showed 2 things. One, what would it look like in 2029 if we continued with the current relationship with AHS? And what would it look like as a second scenario if we went as a standalone, if the relationship with AHS dissolved because AHS is not required to fund the seismic requirements of 2030? What would it look like if AHS and Alameda Hospital parted ways and Alameda Hospital was on its own again? And it demonstrated very clearly from a financial standpoint that that is not an option for the district. We cannot afford to operate as a standalone facility. So at the moment, we'll see in a minute on the next slide, we're in the process of discussing that in more complexity with AHS. We also did a study using Radcliffe architects. They've been the architects for some time for the hospital, to look at our various facilities that I showed you in that previous slide. They actually took the data from the Kaufman Hall study, which showed standalone that Alameda Hospital is still going to need about 25 acute care beds minimum just to serve the population in Alameda out to 2029. So down from what it is currently, but still a pretty healthy census that we have to worry about. If the hospital doesn't exist, where would those patients go? And particularly, I think, I speak for the district board, that are very concerned about potentially a loss of emergency services on the island. Radcliffe was able to determine there is, that needs a lot more development, but there is a potential for fitting the 25 beds plus some long-term care that's on campus right now into the one newest building on our campus that I refer to as the South Wing. That would cost about $120 million. In just construction costs. That's today's dollar, so whatever we got around to constructing that, it would be probably more. And that seems like a low amount if you look at what hospitals have been investing to solve their seismic problems across the Bay Area. We're talking about billions of dollars. However, for a size hospital like Alameda, $120 million is a very sizable price tag that we would have to find ways to capitalize. So right now, what are our remaining challenges and priorities? We have kicked off with Alameda Health System a joint planning committee. It's got board members from both the hospital and the district board. Tracy Jensen is a member of this joint planning committee, and it's staffed by one person from each of the organizations. To begin to look at what our options are, we'll look at the studies that have already been done, probably commission some new studies. We're talking to people throughout the county about their ideas for things that we might develop in terms of new programmatic focuses to augment really and support an emergency department and small acute care presence on the island. We're looking at new development. Alameda is an older community, but it's got quite a bit of very interesting development underway. The long-awaited Alameda Point, which is the site of the old Alameda Naval Air Base, is finally being developed. If you're in that big interest group, you may know about Spirit Alley, which has Hangar One Vodka and St. George and Rosenblum Cellars and all those others that have developed out there. But there are a lot of businesses that are developing there and other locations on the island. It's becoming a particularly attractive area for life science companies to relocate. And one company that just changed over 1,700 employees in moving from the peninsula area, has about 240 of those employees living on the island for the first time. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic we have to plan for. We do need to, I think, continue to find ways to preserve emergency services. It is very hard to get off the island Alameda in anything less than a half an hour in any sort of reasonable traffic time, and of course impossible in the event of a natural disaster, which is what everybody in Alameda and everywhere else in the Bay Area fears. But traffic congestion is so much worse than it was even 10 years ago for us. We do need to look at, I think, creative sources of capitalization. My feeling is whatever project exists, whether it's done with AHS or it's done by the district on its own, is going to need multiple sources and creative sources of capitalization, perhaps working with other public entities in the area, other healthcare entities, government entities. We've had discussions with the county and so forth. So that's going to have to be very, very creatively done. I don't think another parcel tax or an increase in the parcel tax in Alameda is in the cards ever in the future. It was a big effort to do in 2002, and it just, to me, is not probably a realistic option. So we will be looking at additional partnerships and collaboration of all sorts. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you. Didn't take too long.
How much does the county subsidize this? By county, I mean kind of the AHS, because AHS owes the county a
Yes.
tremendous amount of money right now.
Yes. And that I mentioned financial challenges for AHS, which was the nucleus of their concern about the seismic project and their ability to fund it. As I'm sure you know, the county extends a line of credit to AHS.
Very well.
Yeah, you're well aware of it, probably to the penny. And that has been that structure for as many years as I'm aware of it. So AHS, unlike some healthcare systems, has no assets. The assets, except San Leandro Hospital, is the only physical plant assets they have. But all of the other assets, physical plant facilities, were built by the county at the county's expense. And any capital requirements in the future that AHS has, as well as any subsidization of their operating expenses, comes from the county. So that's done through a line of credit. Commissioner Haggerty, tell me what that line of credit max is now. You probably remember better than I do.
To me, well, I don't know.
Three figures
I
in
don't
millions.
really want to say it, to be honest with you, but they should have been paid down a heck of a lot more than they are right now.
And I think they're, as I understand it, they're up against the ceiling of that line of credit right now. And forecasting out with what's, in a nutshell, happening for AHS's financial perspective is tremendous negative impact on all their supplementary revenue. So they
They're
each
over
hope
$160 million.
it's 100. I was going to say 164 or something.
Yeah.
But
But
that's
it should have been paid down by now.
and it's
And it's not, which is
and it's not. And as I understand it, Tracy.
So how much does the hospital require subsidy from AHS? Because $5 million isn't keeping a hospital open.
No. Well, that was subject to of a lot of discussion, and I'm sure it'll be a discussion point for our joint planning committee. Back in 2018, early 18, AHS did a study of the impact of Alameda Hospital on the system. A lot of us were a little bit suspect about what the motivation of that study was, but it showed that, first of all, Alameda, after direct expenses, makes a positive contribution to the system. So if you took Alameda Hospital out of the system, along with its $6 million, which you're right is a drop in the bucket for subsidy, but you took it out of the system, you'd lose things like all of the long-term care revenue and so forth. There was about a $6 million positive contribution margin of Alameda Hospital to AHS. They also added into that study allocating all of the overhead expenses from AHS, which are sizable, very sizable. And after they looked at that, I think they found the bottom line for Alameda Hospital was about $15 to $20 million.
Well, this will be subject of joint meetings between AHS and the county, but I want to be mindful of time. I want
Yes,
to
sorry.
remind commissioners we have a lot to do, but I'm wrong.
So, we have oversight over you and Eden Hospital.
Yes.
And, it seems like you both started down this road at the same time to affiliate yourself with somebody else. You appear to be fairly successful at it, but Eden's not so much. What's the difference? What happened with Eden that, between you and Eden? What's the difference?
Wow.
Or is it a loaded question?
It's a loaded question. I mean, I don't know, we have a time constraint. I think
No, let's
that,
stay with that time constraint.
Okay.
it was complicated. We can talk afterwards.
Okay.
I'd be glad to give you my
Okay.
impression.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you afterwards, we can stick around.
Sure.
I'd like to say it was interesting for somebody who's not from Alameda. It really is.
Okay.
So I appreciate the thoroughness of it. And you do have things that are happening out of the Park District. They're also happening with the Veterans Administration.
Yes.
And that building and all, and how that's going to affect things out there.
That's a great example of one of the type of partners we want to talk to more.
I would think that would be very logical.
The VA is planning a columbarium and an outpatient facility at the very tip point of Alameda Point. Best view in the entire Bay Area. It's fabulous.
All right, anybody else? Okay, well, a couple commissioners want to talk to you.
Thank you.
for
Yes.
their presentation. With that, we'll move to item 9. Do you need to just provide direction to the staff? What do you want from them?
If there was any follow-up or anything that the commission would want staff to look at or have in regards to this presentation.
No.
I think at this point, I can get information from the county. I would like to see a study that says they're a net gain to the district. I think if you maybe just look at the SNF, that may be possible. But if you took the SNF out and just let the hospital stand alone, I think that's a whole different story. So, but I can get that information from the county, but I think there's a lot of information that still needs to be gleaned from this relationship to the financials.
We're supposed to have, whatever, a year, 2 years?
For the hospital district, I believe it's on our study schedule for 2024 to do a municipal service review on the health code.
My recollection is that Alameda, we started a few years ago asking them to come and give us a report periodically. That's what I recall. I'm assuming this was part of it.
I do not recall that, but if I will look into that, and if that is the procedure and protocol, then we will continue to do that.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 9, protest hearing results. Thanks for doing that meeting.
Thank you, Chair. So at a notice public hearing on November 14th, 2019, the Commission approved the annexation of the City of Albany to the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District to create a countywide mosquito abatement district covering all cities within the county, and this was to streamline essential public health services. In accordance with the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act of 2000, the proposal is subject to protest proceedings given that the area is inhabited with 12 or more registered voters. With regard to the annexation, which is inhabited, the Commission must take the following actions. The first being is to order the annexation if written protests have been filed by less than 25% of the registered voters or landowners owning less than 25% of the assessed value within the subject area, or order the annexation subject to an election if at least 25% but less than 50% of voters, or at least 25% of landowners owning 25% or more of assessed value of land submit written protests, or terminate the annexation if a majority of voters have filed written protests. The protest hearing was noticed to all registered voters and landowners within the affected territory and held on Wednesday, January 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the County Administration Building in Oakland. Written protests could either be mailed or dropped off at the LAFCO Administrative Office. The hearing was conducted by the LAFCO Executive Officer as delegated by the Commission pursuant to Government Code Section 5700C in CKH, Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg. LAFCO received 93 written protests, 8 were from registered voters and 85 from landowners. The City of Albany has a total of 11,535 registered voters and approximately 15,000 landowners. Therefore, the number of written protests received did not reach the threshold to either terminate the annexation or call for an election. As a result, in pursuant to Government Code Section 570753, the Commission must take the following action and order the change of organization. Staff recommends approval of ordering the annexation and returns the item to the chair.
Thank you. Did anybody wish to speak on this item? I have no speaking cards. Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to the Commission.
I'll move adoption of the resolution.
Let me finish. For deliberation and action, but you're saying that because of everything that fell into place, that we are compelled to do this?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions?
I thought, I thought it was really interesting. I'm thinking in Livermore, for every household in Livermore, we probably have 2 voters, and on average. And I thought it was really interesting. There's 11,000 voters and 15,000 landowners. And I'm trying to work in my head how you could have that many more property owners than voters. But that was just like that stat just really jumps out at me. So
Well, you tweak John's interest.
I don't really need an answer, but
No,
I just thought that was really
I
interesting.
think so. Okay, Splat.
I will move adoption of the resolution.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? I'm going to support it because we don't work in adults on our plan. So, in alternative one, is that what you want?
Yes.
All right, any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Item 10.
The proposal before the Commission was submitted by the City of Hayward seeking approval to extend wastewater services outside of its jurisdictional boundary to one affected lot located at 27398 Fairview Avenue in the unincorporated community of Fairview. The primary purpose for the city is to request this out-of-area service agreement for the property in question, and this is to facilitate the extension of public wastewater services in step with removing a failed septic system. And it had the potential of creating a public health and safety hazard. A sewer main extension of approximately 300 feet is required and will be paid for by the landowners of the affected territory. Additionally, the proposed out-of-service area agreement is closely in line with the on-site wastewater treatment system permit instructions that advises applicants of the code requirement for connection to public sanitary sewer where the property is within at least 200 feet range, so 300, give or take, makes sense. The affected territory as proposed is planned for single-family residential with limited agricultural use by the County of Alameda. The zoning designation will not change as a result of the annexation. Under Government Code Section 56133, LAFCO may authorize an out-of-area service agreement only if the proposal to extend services to the affected territory is outside of the jurisdictional boundary but within the sphere of influence, or outside the jurisdictional boundary and outside the sphere of influence, but is in response to existing documented threat to public health and safety. With this application, both apply given that the Department of Environmental Health has provided a letter noticing the potential threat to the public health and safety, and that the the affected territory is within the City of Hayward's sphere of influence. Staff finds that the local conditions sufficiently justify an out-of-area service agreement as the most responsive means to provide wastewater services to the territory, and also conditions the approval of the proposed out-of-service area agreement with the signing of both properties to the pre-annexation agreements with the City of Pleasanton. City of Hayward. And lastly, staff has determined the proposal is a project under CEQA, with Alameda LAFCO serving as the lead agency, but it is exempt from further CEQA review under CEQA guidelines 15303D, given that the subject territories can only support one single-family residence on each parcel. And staff recommends for the Commission to adopt the draft resolution approving the out-of-area service agreement at 27398 Fairview Avenue with the City of Hayward. And I will turn the item to the Chair for Commission discussion and any questions from the Commission.
Does anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Okay, good. I didn't mean it like that. Anybody, any questions, comments, deliberation, action? Was that one Sean moving there?
Yes.
Okay, I got a motion by Mayor Sean. Second by Spandario. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion will pass without objection. We will move.
Excuse me, Commissioner Heidi, there's one comment from the audience.
I asked if there anybody in the public.
I raised my hand.
We just voted yes. Do you still want to speak?
I just wanted to say my name is Said Saibi. I come from City of Hayward. In case any questions, I will be here to answer. But since there are no comments,
Thank you. Okay, motion passed without objection. Item 11.
Thank you, Chair. So this proposal is similar to the last one. The proposal before the Commission was submitted by the City of Pleasanton, seeking approval to extend public wastewater services, again, outside of its jurisdictional boundary to one affected lot. And this is located at 354 Virginia Way in the unincorporated community known as Raymond Tract. The primary purpose for the city to request this out-of-area service agreement is also, again, due to a failed septic system and removing that septic system to not create a public health and safety hazard. The sewer main extension is located just right in front of the property, but connection costs will be paid for by the landowners of that affected territory. Additionally, the affected territory as proposed is planned for medium residential density by the East County General Plan of the county. And again, with the zoning designation, the property with a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, the property cannot be further subdivided, and the out-of-service area agreement will not change any land use. And under Government Code Section 56133, LAFCO may again authorize out-of-service area agreements only if the proposal is to extend the affected territory outside the jurisdictional boundary, but within the sphere of influence, which is the case for this proposal, or outside the jurisdictional boundary and outside the sphere of influence, but is in response to an existing documented threat to public health and safety. With the last one, it is within the sphere, but it is a response to a public health and safety hazard. The Alameda Department of Environmental Health has provided a letter noticing the potential threat. Staff does find, in this case as well, that the local conditions sufficiently justify an out-of-area service agreement as the most responsive means to provide wastewater services, given that there is a failed septic system, and also conditions the proposal on the signing of a pre-annexation agreement with the City of Pleasanton. And staff has independently concurred with the City of Pleasanton that the proposal is a project under CEQA, but with Alameda LAFCO serving as the responsible agency, and it is exempt from further CEQA review under guidelines 15061, given that the project will not have significant effect on the environment. And staff recommends the Commission adopt a draft resolution approving the out-of-service area agreement at 354 Virginia Way with the City of Pleasanton. And I will return the item to the chair, or excuse me, return the item to the chair for Commission discussion and any questions.
Anybody in the public wish to speak? Commissioner Splendorio?
So, Rachel, this is the reason for this request is because to hook to septic, to sewer, correct?
Correct.
And the property already has water,
Correct.
but our approval is for water and sewer?
This one is just for wastewater.
Did we already approve one for water?
I believe all of the properties within Green Tract receive water from the City of Pleasanton. I don't think that was approved by this commission. I can double check, but I don't see anything in our history where we approved that.
Is there an amendment to that answer?
Yeah, that's what I was on.
I know we've approved some.
I believe this is part of the that mass approval that you had to do retroactively that we went through a couple of years ago. We'll have to check.
We're picking up.
Right.
Want to make sure we're picking up.
I think that was for Happy Valley. I don't know if that was for Green Tract, but I will double check.
There was for Red Track.
Okay.
We'll check. We'll check.
So make sure we get.
Mayor Marchand?
Do the answer coming up here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Steve Kirkpatrick, City Engineer for the City of Pleasanton. We did go through all the connections that we had to sewer and water in the main track. We have no more unauthorized connections that were that were made post 2001. So we're keeping on top of that. This is a request for connection to sanitary sewer in the Raymond tract now because of their failed septic system. But they are approved for water, and we have none that are no longer unapproved.
At some point, that needs to be annexed into your city, but that's a whole new fight. Mayor Marchand?
Okay, so question on page 87, because we've been talking this for a long time, and it's coming in piecemeal. And part of the problem is we heard from a number of the residents of the Raymond tract that they did not want city services. This was they don't want streetlights. They don't want city services. And in the staff report, it says the City of Pleasanton indicates in its application, annexation of the parcel is not feasible at this time due to lack of resident interest. So that means the resident at this parcel is not interested in annexing, but they want the city services to go in for the wastewater.
That's stating that the city does not want to do a piecemeal annexation for one property. They would rather just have all the properties annexed within the Raymond tract area. And so the property owner is willing to sign a pre-annexation agreement with the City of Pleasanton, stating that if an application is submitted to LAFCO for an island annexation, they cannot provide a written protest.
Okay, I'm sorry. So my reading of it was due to lack of resident interest as opposed to due to lack of the interest of the residents. So you see the difference is like the resident in that house wasn't interested. My reading was that they are. Don't worry, I got it. That's what's important.
Sometimes we like to give John a few minutes.
I was coming back to it.
You got it?
I get there.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so can we move on? All right. All right, anybody else? Ms. Glenn?
I'm still scoreboard watching, so you let us know when we get over the majority needed for annexation, right? That's standing order. Let us know.
Yes.
I'll move approval. There you go.
I'll second.
Now a motion and a second. The second came from Weiss County, the motion came from Mayor Thorne. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Move to item 12.
So the proposal before the commission was also submitted by the city of Pleasanton seeking approval, in this case now, for public water service. And again, it's outside of its jurisdictional boundary to an affected lot, legal lot located at 280 Oak Lane in the unincorporated area of Alameda County, near the Happy Valley unincorporated community. I don't know if it's considered Happy Valley, but it's right around there. The primary purpose for the city to request this out-of-area service agreement for the property in question is to establish and formalize a water connection, as the subject residence has been sharing a water meter with a property located at 7661 Foothill Road for the last 12 years. The water main is located in front of the subject territory, and the property owners will be responsible for all associated costs to connect to the city of Pleasanton. And I believe that territory does receive wastewater services from the city. The affected territory as proposed is planned for low-density residential by the East County General Plan, area plan of the county, and its zoning designation is classified as R1B40 with a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet, and it does, proposal approval will not change the land use of the territory, and it does not allow for the property to be subdivided. Again, we have that it's outside of the jurisdictional boundary, but within the sphere of influence, the subject property under Government Code Section 56133, so the commission may authorize an out-of-area service agreement. It does not have a public health and safety hazard. The staff finds that the local conditions sufficiently justify an out-of-area service agreement as the most responsive means to formalize a public water connection to the affected territory. And it also conditions this approval on a pre-annexation agreement with the city of Pleasanton. And staff does independently concur with the city of Pleasanton's, findings under CEQA with Alameda LAFCO serving as the responsible agency that the project is exempt from further review under the guidelines of 15061B3, given that the property will not have a significant impact or effect on the environment. And staff is happy to answer any questions, and staff recommends to adopt the draft resolution approving the out-of-area service agreement for 280 Oak Lane to the city of Pleasanton.
Thank you. Anybody in the public wish to speak? Questions, deliberation, action?
I'm going to commend the city of Pleasanton for moving this along.
Is that much of a motion?
I think Jared should.
I'll make the motion. Okay, you got
I'm
a
happy to
second.
second.
Okay, I have a motion second. Any objection? No motion. The motion passed without objection. Thank you. Item 13.
Thank you, Chair. So Alameda LAFCO will receive a progress report from QK Associates on its countywide municipal service review on water, wastewater, flood control, and stormwater services. Jerome Keene is here, the project manager, to provide the overview to the commission.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. As the Executive Officer stated, my name is Jerome Keene. I'm a Senior Planner at QK, working out of the Clovis office, and I'm here to provide your update on the municipal service review progress for your water and wastewater, flood control, and storm drainage service providers. So just to start, what we'll do is talk about data collection, reconciliation of that information. Once we receive that information, the confirmation of that reference documentation, the progress of the document, and as well as the projected timeline going forward.
So can I just ask how long your presentation is in planning for this meeting?
I can make it 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
That just seemed like 35, 40.
No.
Okay.
No. I'm very short-winded. out of necessity.
Me too.
Yeah. So data collection analysis, we contacted 32 agencies within the county of Alameda and collected information through questionnaire as well as requesting, urban water management plans, master plans, agreement, various types of agreements, whether they're supply agreements, capacity agreements, budgets, audits. We had significant follow-up for that information with those agencies. In some cases, we had staff members move on without telling us who to contact. So tracking that down became difficult at times. But we completed that data collection, in August 19th, 2019. As you can see, there are a lot of agencies in your county for this exercise, some which that overlap and have similar, or not similar, but information that overlaps the same boundary. So man, sorry. And the various types of documents contain information that needed to be reconciled. Some information was in acre feet, gallons per day, million gallons. I see Commissioner Johnson laughing about that. The conversion factors and making sure we were apples to apples comparison throughout the document was a chore, to say the least. So in terms of the draft document, we've done population projections. ABAG did most of those projections, but within each one of the master plans or urban water management plans, there are other projections that they have. We also do a 24-hour projection of population, which for Alameda County is only a 0.2% increase according to the Bureau of Economic Statistics. We also identified a disadvantaged community during this exercise for the city, for Alameda County, whereas you previously didn't have one. That would be the unincorporated community of Ashland. But it's within the sphere of influence of San Leandro. It already received services and it receives structural fire protection. So for all intensive purposes, it is a DUC for income only. We also conducted agency analysis for supplies, maintenance, best management practices. And then at the request of the commission, we're doing a climate change and resiliency section. It's not a required section of Cortesia Knox Hertzberg, but we're reviewing all the policies of the agencies to determine what steps they've taken to address climate change within their plans. Obviously, in the Bay Area, it is an issue, right? For sure. So we're taking that with in the valley, it's not as much of a concern except for groundwater, sea level rise, inundation from salt water, as well as extreme weather events is, it's doubly important in the Bay Area. Timeline going forward, as I stated, we've completed data collection and verification. We're nearing completion of the draft document. We anticipate that done within the next 30 days. With that, you would have it sent to staff for document review and any suggested revisions. However, we feel that there are sections that the executive officer could begin reviewing immediately, concurrently with finishing the document. And we anticipate the document being before your commission within the next 90 to 120 days. And that's the end of my presentation.
Nicely done.
No problem.
Question?
I certainly never thought it would be so difficult to pull it all together.
Herding cats.
You're doing it well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That seems to be it. Thank you. We'll move on. We're going to move to matters initiated by the commission. Okay. Informational items?
There are no current or pending proposals for the commission to review. As far as the progress report, there will be a disadvantaged unincorporated community informational report at our next meeting. And just the attachment in the staff report, Pamela wanted to send her thanks to the commission for allowing staff and commissioners to attend the annual conference.
All right, that's pretty good. So under item 17, you see the next meetings. You're forewarned. We will now move to the closed session of today, which is public employee performance evaluation of our executive director. I would ask that all non-essential personnel please leave the room. That's all of you.
There are not too many non-essentials.
Commissioners, can I just do really fast if I can get a photo with you, so for Sandy and Teresa?
Sure.
Very, very quickly.
Should we go stand behind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in open session. You can now use your mics again, which is fun. If you would, the only thing that I'm going to announce out of closed session is that we did do the performance review of our executive director. And after that, I would say if anybody had any comments that they wanted to say in public, you have this opportunity now. Okay.
Consensus, we think you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And considering you really hit the deck running, and there was a lot of stuff going on, you were able to create a greater sense of autonomy with the organization, negotiating the MOU that was mutually beneficial and agreeable. I think that was quite remarkable, because we've been working on that since I got on the commission years ago. So well done.
Okay, anybody else?
I'll second that.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
All right, so with that, we will move on here. And we can, as I said, Rachel, we can certainly talk about some of the other issues if they bubble up, but right now, I don't have an agenda in front of me because I lost it on my. Everybody's closed it out. I think we are, I think we've done everything on the agenda except for adjourn.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, the reminder, there's cake here.
There you go.
Next.
But yeah,
I'm good, yeah.
He's good.
Yours is blanking, yours. But be reminded that you have a meeting, the Policy and Budget Committee has a meeting on February 6th at 2 o'clock here. And I guess our regular meeting's being moved to Castro Valley.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Oh, lovely,
What?
lovely. We're at the Castro Valley Sanitary District.
Look more City Hall. That's
Why are we moving it there?
I believe this room
It's not available.
is not available.
What?
Because of St. Patrick's Day in March.
Oh, for just March?
All the rest of the year.
No, just this one.
Just
meeting.
this
Okay, so Thursday, March 12th at 2 o'clock, you'll all be in Castro Valley. There's a great ice cream arena.
Just meet on Wednesday.
Plan on stopping there on the way out.
Free local days.
Okay, anybody else?
Great bakery too.
Then we are adjourned, thank you.
Push
There's
back.
a big kitty in the room.
They do all the
All right.
store stuff out there.
Food.
They stolen us underfoot.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for traffic.
Jerry, did you download the?
He's waiting on cake. Come on.
Okay, who am I fooling?
It's a short time, that's why.
Did this